So ResultsPositive, just very quickly, we are a North American consulting and software solutions provider, exclusive HP Elite partner, and HP's PPM Partner of the Year in 2010, 2011, and 2012. Hopefully 2013 as we go to Discover here in a few weeks. So a core part of our business is HP PPM, and we try to stay up with the very latest and greatest of what's happening with the PPM solution. As far as PPM 9.20, and I won't spend a lot of time on the slides, we'll actually get into the demo and walk through this so we can make it more interactive. But the focus of PPM 9.2 was the user experience improvements, where you have a new look and feel and user interaction for the dashboard pages. There were some quick navigation on the request detail pages and a pinned toolbar that we'll go through. Some of these seem pretty insignificant as a bullet on a slide, but actually I believe provide some pretty significant user experience enhancements within in the solution, especially this one where we talk about displaying tips for missing required fields. The visual improvements, of course, with the new UI, and then a big focus on integrations with ALM for the managing application change type defects and requirements, as well as with the project quality integration to bring the project quality dashboard into PPM. And then a new solution from HP, the Agile Manager, that has an integration that's was introduced with 9.2 and enhanced in 9.2.1. And the Agile Manager solution is actually a SaaS-only solution from HP. And I can show you Agile Manager today, but also I have a webinar tomorrow covering these integrations with ALM and Agile Manager in detail at the same time tomorrow. So from a user experience perspective, one of the things that they implemented in the dashboards was asynchronous loading. So if you have a bunch of portlets on a dashboard page, they will now in 9.2 and 9.2.1 each load individually. So if one loads quicker than the other, you will get that data displayed. And if you have a long-running portlet, the other information will be displayed while that one is continuing to gather its data. So that's a nice feature. When you look at dashboard design and focus, you might want to focus the portlets that are up in the top left, and the first to be seen as those that are the quicker running portlets, and then those that run a bit slower might be further down the page. The pinned toolbar on the request detail page, so this is when you'll see this in the demo, when you're scrolling up and down a request detail page, this toolbar at the top that has both the workflow transitions as well as the actions of save or submit, copy, will always remain pinned at the top. So there's no more scrolling back up to the top to save or submit a request. It's always going to remain right here. So that's a pretty significant usability enhancement. You'll also notice the quick navigation bar on the left, which allows you to jump to a particular section within the request form, so that you don't have to scroll and find the right section. You can actually click and jump to it. You can minimize this jump to section so you can gain back that additional real estate if you want to on the form. And then there's the display tips for the missing required fields. During demos, I find this to be quite useful because I'll just go into a request form and click submit, and then it highlights all of the fields that I need to fill in, as opposed to looking for the sometimes difficult to find little red star. And it also provides links here at the top that you can go directly to those fields and fill those in. So like I said, this one is pretty significant, I think, as you talk about the usability for your users to be able to navigate through and submit information into PPM. And I think the final one was where you can choose the most recently created request type directly from the top menu, which is here. It used to be create request, new request, and you had to open the screen to see the most recently created. Now those are populated in the menu structure. So that was it from a user experience perspective. From a visual improvement perspective, this is just a list of pages that have the visual improvement, but it's fundamentally the dashboards, the requests, the projects, financial summaries, program staffing profile, login, and then all the search and create pages for those under the admin menu. So it's a significant amount of the application, not the full application, that received the visual improvements in 9.2, and they will continue, the plans are to continue to roll that out through the rest of the application. I'll just quickly run through these. Here's the login page, looks a bit different. Here's the dashboard page and the new menu look and feel, and we'll see these live in the demo as well. Here's the new project overview page. The portlets remain the same, but they have that new visual look and feel. The financial summary page, the program page, and then the staffing profile page. And finally, the request detail we've seen before. Just a couple examples of the search pages, the portlets and charts. Okay, and then on the integration side, there's a new landing page where you configure the integration. So this is very nice because you can configure your ALM integrations for both your quality metrics and your defects and your requirements here, as well as the Agile Manager integration, all configured within a single page in PPM, and it's all configured through the UI. So there's no editing files or any of that. I can actually walk you through that in some level of detail. There were also several enhancements to the managed application change. One being that you can define the type of requirement that you want to create in ALM. There's better configurations, easier configurations, optional synchronization in the sense that you can decide which fields you want to synchronize, and you can define the control, and this is all done through the user interface. And better failover and troubleshooting mechanisms where you can actually go in and look at what's failed and retry transactions. The view project quality, this is the integration with ALM where you can bring the quality scorecard and additional defect and requirements trending portlets right into PPM from an ALM release. I will say that in 9.2 this was linked at the project level, which meant a project in PPM needed to be linked to a project in ALM. In 9.2.1 they've actually moved this down to the task level in PPM, which is more logical from the sense that you may have a project with multiple phases that have multiple testing phases or testing projects going on. And so now you can do all of this functionality down at the task level in 9.2.1 as well. And then the Agile Manager integration solution was big in 9.2, and it fundamentally allows you to manage multiple Agile projects with a master PPM project and get real-time Agile project information from the Agile Manager directly into PPM, and I'll show that integration live as well. And then what's new in PPM 9.2.1? So I mentioned integrating the PPM Center tasks with multiple ALM releases, or maybe I didn't mention that, but that's new. So you can now enter tasks. You can integrate the PPM Center tasks with the ALM releases at the task level now versus the project level. There are enhancements to the Agile Manager integration that I'll cover. There's this new ability to link waterfall projects and Agile projects to PPM tasks, and I'll cover that. I've configured that to show what it does. There's a new PPM time entry mini app on HP Anywhere 10, and there's support and certification for PPM on the Safari browser on the iPad in 9.2.1. So those are the major features in 9.2.1. So I'm going to log into my system here as Clark Kent, who's a super user, demo user, so we can cover all of the functionality within a single a single sign-in within the demo. And so I think as you look at the asynchronous loading, I'll just go to a project manager page that has a few large portlets on it, or maybe resource manager page where we have the analyze assignment loads portlets. You should see the asynchronous loading happening here, where you notice that those portlets loaded asynchronously. One thing I failed to mention in 9.2.1 as a new feature was in 9.2 they took away the minimize, maximize on individual portlets within a dashboard page. That has been reinstated in 9.2.1. So in the 9.2 version, you can't minimize and maximize these, but you can now in 9.2.1. And the value of that, I think, as you know, is it doesn't actually retrieve the data if it's minimized when you go to the portlet page. And so they did reinstate that feature in 9.2.1. As far as the request features, and I'll jump right into those, I'm just going to create a PFM proposal here. And you'll see the first thing you'll notice is that you've got the jump to bar on there, the jump to section or navigation section on the left, where you can jump directly to the sections within the workflow. One of the things I will have you notice is that this pin toolbar for submission of this request remains at the top, even when I scroll past the point, that it would actually go down with the screen. So, and then I mentioned what I do now in demos is I just click submit on a blank request, and this is the feature that allows you to see the required fields in a much more defined way than you can with just the asterisk. So you can see the sections that have required fields, and you can see those individual required fields here, and you can actually click on them and go directly to that field and fill it in. These remain highlighted, and so it's much easier to understand what fields are required within the request type. And then once again, if you scroll all the way down here, you'll notice your submit button is still available to be able to submit the request. Now when we jump back into that request, I just want to show you on the pin toolbar that you also have all of your workflow steps. And one area that you might notice a difference if you have workflows that have multiple paths or parallel paths for approval, they used to show on top of each other where you'd see two different sets of approval buttons. Now they show side by side. So if you had a proposal review and a finance review that were parallel workflow steps, you would actually see that finance review here with its eligible actions as well. So that's one of the differences, because they wanted to save the space and only put one line for this pin toolbar, that they put those to the right as opposed to stacking those parallel approvals within the workflow. So at this point, you can simply approve those, and things work like they work in previous versions. Once again, you can minimize this. You still have your expand and collapse all capabilities within the form. So pretty significant changes in the usability here that was added in Release 9.2. So as far as the integrations, I'll just quickly cover that. There's a new screen for open administration. Actually, I need to sign in as the admin user to get there. So there's a new integrations page, so it's under Open Administration, Integrations, Quality Center. And this is where you actually define and maintain your integrations with with Agile Manager and with ALM. And so you can see under the Manage Application Change, we actually have a couple of requirement integrations set up in this environment, as well as a defect integration to ALM 11.5. On the View Project Quality, we have one integration set up where it's pulling the project quality information from our ALM 11.5 instance. And on the Agile Manager, we actually have an integration set up with a SaaS-hosted version of Agile Manager, a server that we have for ResultsPositive, and I'll show you that integration as well. So as we look at the capabilities of 921 from an integration perspective, I'm going to start by going into my APO pilot project here. And you're going to start to see some different tabs than you're used to on the project overview page. The first thing I'll scroll down to here is the quality scorecard. So this is actually the 9.2 integration where it's integrating the quality scorecard at the project level. And you can go to that scorecard directly in ALM by clicking on this link, and it will launch your ALM solution, and then you can authenticate into ALM and see the scorecard directly in there. So it pulls the information real time directly from ALM. So you're going to get, at that point, the very latest version of the ALM scorecard, if I can remember the username and password. Might have to, okay. So you'll always have the latest version of that scorecard directly in PPM when you refresh the project status page. And so this should take us directly to, actually, I think it, yeah, directly to that scorecard in ALM. So this is the same scorecard in ALM that we're seeing in the scope of the PPM release. So in 9.2, it was integrated at the project level. In 9.2.1, you actually have the ability to put a scorecard linked to a task in PPM. So you can link a task in PPM to a release scorecard in ALM. The other thing that I'll show you within the scope of this project is actually a new view for a timeline view. And this is actually a pretty significant feature that was released in 9.2.1. And this is where you have the ability on a project task within a work plan to actually link to another PPM project. And so what this is showing here is the timeline of the APO pilot work plan, and then there's a secondary work plan linked to this, or project link called the rollout plan. And if I click here on the rollout plan, you can actually see the milestones and the project cost summary for that rollout plan. And this is a standard PPM project. And so I'll show you how you map these. What this shows in the timeline view is the milestones of that rollout plan project. So you can see the overall APO pilot project is running, and then we have a task that's a sub-project basically that's the rollout plan project, and you can see how those work together. So if I go back to the work plan for APO pilot, I'll show you how I mapped that sub-project. And so within APO pilot, what I did is I created this rollout plan task. And within the rollout plan task, as you open the actual task details, there's going to be another tab on here called a hybrid project tab. With this hybrid project tab is where you actually link the sub-project to it. And so I'm actually going to remove this mapping between the two. And then I'm going to show you how you map a waterfall or an agile project to this task. So if I go to map a waterfall project, there are a bunch of rules it looks at, but it looks at projects within PPM that you have access to that fall within the time frame of the project, and there's certain rules around actuals and other things. All of the rules are defined in the release notes. I'm going to look for my rollout plan project here. And so if I select that project, actually I just made a mistake because I just opened it. If you actually click here and confirm that selection, that's when it does the mapping that you saw back on the overall project plan in that timeline view. And so it's as simple as that to have the process now of really at least being able to identify like a master sub-project relationship and how and what the timeline looks like. Now, as far as rolling up financials and things like that, the first release doesn't have all of that. But I do believe that just based on this structure, that has to be where they're heading from that perspective. So I don't think that this feature is 100% implemented, but it certainly gives you the ability at least to see that you have related projects and that each task within this work plan still abides by all of its predecessors and dependency relationships. And so this rollout plan, as an example, is a full project within PPM that could be executed by somebody else. And if you have dependencies within this master plan, those would still be applicable, as well as the ability to not only have dependencies but predecessors on it. Now, I'm not sure on the roll-up of the financials. I don't think it's there, and I haven't had time to fully research the capability that was introduced, but I just wanted to show that. It's only been out about a week or so, and I haven't had time to fully go through the capabilities on that. So that's a cool new feature. I'm actually going to go into another project here called Mercury Tours, and I'm going to sign out and sign back in as Clark Kent so I can do that and show you how the Agile Manager integration works. I've got that integrated with a separate project. And so if I go into the Mercury Tours project, we're going to have a similar view here on the timeline view, where this Mercury Tours project is actually linked to specific releases within Agile Manager. And so release 2, 3, and 4, and actually if you click on any of these releases here, what you get instead of the PPM project information, it's actually going out to Agile Manager, and it's going to bring back a burn down or a burn up chart for that particular release within Agile Manager. So that's coming directly from the hosted Agile Manager. Now, I don't have great demo data in that release. Let me check release 3. So here's the release burn-up chart. Here's the sprint burn down. Here's the themes, the status of the user stories by theme. And then here's the status of the user stories by feature and whether they're new or in progress. So all of these charts are coming directly from the Agile Manager solution. And that's, once again, based on mapping a task in PPM to a particular release within Agile Manager. And so I'll show quickly Agile Manager. And so I've signed in to my Agile Manager solution. And we were just looking at release 3. And so this release burn down chart is exactly what you're seeing in the scope of PPM. And to take it one step further, and I'll cover this in detail in the webinar tomorrow, the way that you integrate those Agile plans is the same as you do the waterfall project. So if I go to, let me get to my next set of tasks here. If I look at release 3, which is currently an active sprint or active release, and you can actually see the mapping here to the Agile project by looking at this hybrid project task. I think I chose the wrong one. Just bear with me for a second here. It's actually mapped at this level. And this is where the linkage is to the Agile project release 3 from that PPM task. And you're going to see the same charts here within the scope of the actual task. And then the final thing I wanted to show just quickly was the new time management mobile app, which I have running in an emulator here. I'm actually going to maximize this window, and I'm pretty sure that it's timed out on me. And if it hasn't, I want to go back in anyway. So this is HP Anywhere 10, and I'm just going to sign in. So you would do this on your smartphone. The time management mini app works on the smartphone. So what I like to do when I show this is actually give it a profile of the smartphone once I get to the app. And you see you would get to My Apps. This is an emulator, so it doesn't save the apps that you have. So I'm going to actually enable this timesheet submission app. And now when I go back, I have timesheet submission. I'm going to actually minimize that window so it looks more like a smartphone. And then what you do is click on this app, and this is what it would look like on your iPhone. And so you're logged in as your individual user, and it's going to show you the timesheet or the calendar for the current working period or current time period. In this case, it's bi-weekly time periods, and I'm actually logged in as a user, Barbara Getty. And what you can do is click on a particular date, and it's going to pull up your tasks that you have, your suggested items already on the timesheet app, and then you just go ahead and input the number of hours that you have on that particular task. You say you're done, and you save it, and you do this a day at a time until you're ready to submit that timesheet, and then you can go ahead and submit. And so this is actually what you would see, or similar to what you would see on a smartphone. Now, you can edit and add lines to this. So if you need to add lines, it actually goes out and sees all of the lines that you have access to coming from PPM, and you're allowed to add timesheet lines as well. And then you can go ahead and input time against those timesheet lines as well. So if you wanted to put time on the 20th now against that gather requirements, you would simply put your 8 hours in, say you're done, save it. And similarly, on the next day, you could do, I spent 8 hours on second level review, done. Now this, when you submit this timesheet, it goes through all of the same policies that you have within your PPM environment, and allows you to just enter the timesheet on a mobile device. So, and then finally, when you do the submission, if you go ahead and submit, it sums the period if you want to submit, and you go ahead and submit that timesheet. If we go back into PPM, and we'll sign in as the Barbara Getty user, we should be able to see that timesheet submitted here in PPM. And so that would have been for the 5/16 to 5/31. And we can see the 8 hours I entered on the 20th on gather requirements is submitted on that timesheet in a total of 46 hours. So that's the mobile timesheet approval as well. One other thing I wanted to cover before we quickly go to questions and answers is just talking about ResultsPositive quickly and some solution offerings we have. So we, as a consulting company, have focused on strategy planning and governance. We also do executive scorecard and APM and the ALM suite, as well as application performance management, as well as the service and asset management. So we do have coverage in other areas outside of PPM. And we also are a SaaS provider for HP PPM, so we do have customers running SaaS here at ResultsPositive. We host their environments and maintain their environments, so this is just an example of one of those offerings. We've also focused on building some toolkits for resource management and project management as add-on solutions and portlets. And I'm going to demo these for you in just a minute to show you some of the portlet capabilities in PPM that we've leveraged. And then we also have a BI practice where we're focused on building out business objects reporting. And so we have a solution offering that consolidates the PPM reporting universes into one and have 30-plus out-of-the-box reports with that Business Objects Accelerator package. And here's an example of some of those reports, just a visual. So we have PMO metrics and cycle metrics, and most of the reports in this package are focused on that project and proposal process. So let me quickly just show you the resource management toolkit because I have it in this environment. And there's a couple of things that you go to the dashboard. I'm sorry, I need to once again sign out. So in our resource management toolkit, we've focused on using some capabilities around portlet communication and some of the pivot portlets to be able to give you different views. And so I'll just run through a couple of these. But this is a resource actuals versus allocation variance, so a clustered bar chart. And the way this works is it looks at a monthly basis and it looks at the allocation for the resource, and then on the staffing profile, and it looks at the actuals that are coming through from the timesheet, and then it basically gives a variance. And that variance could be that you didn't have as many actuals as you were allocated for, and it could also be that you had as many actuals as you were allocated for, but it was a different allocation. And so the variance is really just a true net variance, not saying that, if you were allocated 100 hours on project A and you only worked 80, then the variance is 20. But if you're allocated 100 hours on project A and you worked 100 hours on project B, then the variance is really 200. And so this is just a variance to say that this is not matching from a resource perspective. And so if you look at a particular solution in here, here's one where in April, Barbara Getty had an allocation of 400 hours, an actual effort of, that keeps going away, 152. Now, if I click on this, this actually uses portlet communication to fill in the rest of these, and you can see her allocations here on Implement PPM Project and Resource Management in the month of April. Those were the allocation hours and the roles. And then there's actually Build New Server Farm as well, where she was allocated. And then you can look at the actuals coming through being quite different. So she actually had a bunch of actuals on this Neptune project. And so that's why the variance is so high. So this particular portlet is one example in our toolkit of the ability to use. So we have actual versus allocation variance, both from a cluster bar, a pivot, and a list perspective. Then we have resource utilization. Once again, a similar type view where you start to look at the resource utilization and under and over utilized resources within a given period. And then you can actually click on their actuals and see where they log the actuals. So this was a case of an overutilization by 20 hours in each of these weeks. And then finally we have actuals by project type, a stacked bar chart, and then actuals by project class. So if you look at the actuals by project type, as an example, you can start to see the project type and the actuals, and then what you can do is drill in. So in November of 2012, we had about 350 actuals for standard projects, and then you can see all of the projects. And with these pivot portlets, you can actually adjust the portlet itself so you can see all of the hours for Neptune 2 and for One World, the summary of each of those, and then you can actually look at specific resource hours if you wanted to as well. And so you can see that Doris Wagner logged all her time against the Web for One World and these two tasks in November. And so if you click on any of these, this second portlet then gets updated, and you can drag and drop the columns within that pivot portlet to be able to summarize. So you might want to summarize just by resource as an example. So if you put project up here and task up here and timesheet up here, then you're getting just your actuals by the resource. And then you can say, I just want to see actuals by resource for the Neptune 2 project as an example. I need to get rid of this. And it shows you. So these are very interactive capabilities within PPM utilizing out-of-the-box portlets. So I guess from a next steps perspective, I wanted to cover one other thing. We are offering a 45-day free trial of PPM 921 that we'll host in a ResultsPositive environment for you. If that helps with your organization to be able to look at 921 and sell the features, we will offer that. All you have to do is let us know, and we'll spin up an environment and give you access to it. It will just be for you to use. And then there's also an Agile Manager license available through HP that if you're on 9.2, you can get 3 months free of 10 Agile Manager licenses. We also would love to do other demos and show you our reporting solutions if that makes sense for your organization.